Welcome to LNN Spotlight, a podcast by the Latino News Network. I'm Belen Dumont, writer-editor for the Latino News Network and your host. Our coverage at the Latino News Network explores how democracy works and breaks down complicated political processes for our audiences. Today's LNN Spotlight episode will discuss what Rhode Islanders need to know before casting a ballot this election season and explore statewide voting trends. About 17% of the Rhode Island population currently identifies as Hispanic or Latino, while these diverse communities expand every year and a young Latino electorate continually grows. The Ocean State is hosting the presidential preference primary on April 2nd. The mail ballot application deadline is March 12th, and early voting begins March 13th. Here to help us prepare for this election season are Rhode Island Secretary of State Gregg and Director of Elections Kathy Placencia. Secretary Amore and Director Placencia, welcome to our program.
Thank you, Belen.
So I was hoping if we can start with the basics. So Secretary Amore, we're going to start with you. If you could first share about your role as Rhode Island Secretary of State and your office's responsibilities.
Sure. And again, thank you for giving us this opportunity. So the Secretary of State has broad responsibilities, constitutional responsibilities, and others. The most prominent of which is helping to run elections with the Board of Elections and our local canvassing offices around the state, the 39 cities and towns. But we are also responsible for business services. So every business that registers in the state of Rhode Island registers through our office. We also help them maintain their good standing and support new business owners with a whole host of programs that give them information as to how to go about starting that business. We are the depository for all government records, so we oversee the state archives, and we are also the state's public information office. So we have many responsibilities, although the one that I am mostly connected with in the public's view is elections. The one I am most connected with in my role as Chief Civic Engagement Officer comes from my past as an American government and history teacher for many years in high school. So we do a lot with civic engagement that crosses over into voting.
I appreciate that explanation. Thank you. I was wondering, Director Placencia, if you could similarly tell us about your role and duties as Director of Elections.
Sure. So, and thank you for doing this and having us on here today. So I oversee the day-to-day duties of the Elections Division at the Rhode Island Department of State. So this includes the management of the Central Voter Registration System and the Voter Information Center, online mail ballot application, and the designing and proofing of all ballots. I also work closely with our partner organizations and the 39 local boards of canvassers to ensure that Rhode Islanders have accurate and up-to-date election information.
It's great to have this sort of context because even myself, being that younger generation, you're not really sure how vast these responsibilities are. It's a little more than I expected. Secretary Amore, I was hoping that you can explain when it comes to voter registration and turnout rates. Data has shown that Rhode Island voter registration rates have continually increased since the 1970s, although the actual number of ballots cast has remained relatively steady. Why might this be?
So Rhode Island, like many states, engages in voter registration at the DMV. So when you're interacting with the Division of Motor Vehicles, you are also afforded the opportunity to register to vote. So since that has taken place really across the country, but here in Rhode Island, voter registration rates continue to go up. We also have pre-registration for 16-year-olds, and they are able to pre-register so that when they are 18, or in certain cases, 17 voting in a primary, when they will be 18 by the general election, they are able to register as well. And, one of our focuses here at the Department of State is to increase voter turnout. Now, Rhode Island is kind of average among states. We're kind of right in the middle. The national rate equals our rate here. We did set a turnout record in 2020, and part of that was due to significant voting by mail. Because of the pandemic, every Rhode Islander was sent a mail ballot application, and that made it easy for them. And many states like Utah, Colorado, Washington State, they vote predominantly by mail. So we're trying to make sure that Rhode Islanders have every opportunity. right? So they can vote early in person 20 days prior at their city or town hall, just like they do on election day. They can vote by mail for any reason. There is not a restricted vote by mail process in Rhode Island. You can just ask for a ballot and vote by mail. And we're offering these opportunities because we want more participation. We especially want more participation amongst 18 to 25-year-olds. And our focus is on those students, but those young people, but also the state at large. So we're average, but we can do better for sure.
Thank you for explaining that. I'm excited to talk more about mail-in ballots later on in this conversation. I guess that sort of leads us to educational campaigns as well, like the Trusted Info 2024 initiative that encourages all Ocean State residents to get election information from trusted resources. Could you expand on this work, please?
We've seen so much misinformation around elections and around election results that we want Rhode Islanders to know that they can trust the information they're getting from our office. And so Trusted Info is a nationwide effort, bipartisan effort to make sure that people in the United States can go to one source in each state and get good information on all the things that we just talked about, registration, but also dates and times. I know you're familiar with what has happened recently in the New Hampshire primary, where a deep fake phone call went out with President Biden's voice, giving the wrong dates for that primary and really encouraging people not to vote. So we want to make sure that if someone were to get that type of phone call in Rhode Island, they would call our office or email our office or go to vote.ri.gov and know that the information there is the information that is correct.
Switching gears a bit, the Ocean State's Latino population has steadily increased over the past few decades, as it has nationwide, but it has outpaced the growth of other ethnic racial groups across the state. There has also been an increase in Latino representation among elected Rhode Island officials. I was wondering if either of you could expand on the role that Rhode Island's Latino communities have played politically so far. What role may these communities take on in the future?
So I'll start and I'll let Kathy jump in when she sees fit. So before I was Secretary of State, I was a member of the Rhode Island House of Representatives. And when I entered the Rhode Island House of Representatives in 2013, 2% of the House membership was Latino, 2%. And you know what that translated to? Two members. Today, the Rhode Island House of Representatives is at about 11%, and that membership equals 9 members. So not 17% where it should be, right, to reflect the community at large, but we are making significant progress. And as a history teacher, I know that population is the first indicator, and what lags behind is a political influence, right? So the voting comes first, and then the participation comes second. And we have seen that in Rhode Island history throughout. We saw the Irish immigrants first come here, be a significant part of the population and not even have voting rights. And then eventually they started to elect the mayors and the governors. Then the Italian immigrants did the same. And we're seeing the same thing with the Latino population, a significant population with significant growth and continued significant growth. And I think we've seen that reflected in our elected leadership. There was a brief time where both the Secretary of State and the Lieutenant Governor were both Latinas in a state where there's 5 statewide officers. So that really reflected the state. And I think we're on a trajectory where that will continue. I think for the first time in our history, we see a United States Supreme Court that looks like the nation. And we certainly see a Providence City Council for the first time in history be a majority-minority city council. So yes, I think the Latino community and their voting power is here to stay. And every elected official that I know pays attention to that and understands that this is a growing community and a diverse community, of course, but that they're a significant part of our voting population.
So looking at accessibility, kind of wondering what types of barriers might have prevented residents from casting their ballots in the past, and what kind of efforts have been needed to support potential voters?
So in Rhode Island, there are 4 communities where voter information is required to be available in Spanish. But we make every effort to provide bilingual voter information as much as possible. So this includes trusted election sources like vote.ri.gov and staff who speak Spanish in the Department of State Elections Division. We also work with local boards of canvassers and the State Board of Elections to ensure that staff is trained to address questions Rhode Islanders have on casting a ballot, especially in those 4 communities. Ultimately, our focus is on ensuring that every eligible voter and candidate in Rhode Island has the information they need to participate in our elections. So we publish guides for both voters and candidates in English and Spanish, and we are continuing to work with to make elections more accessible for everyone. We have a dedicated outreach team and bilingual staff who ensure that our messages are reaching current and potential voters.
If I'm correct, also there's been early voting hours that has been implemented recently, right? It seems like there's a nice range of different efforts that look at language, but also maybe
access. Yeah, access. I mean, it's as simple as that, right? We have a society now that does not have set work hours, right?
exactly scheduled.
And folks in the service industry, especially, they need flexibility to vote. And that's why voting by mail and early voting is so important. But I think we can do better. And our office is leading initiative for same-day voter registration, which in essence is someone's been living here, but they haven't registered to vote. They get engaged, they find an issue that they're passionate about, or they find a candidate they're passionate about. Well, they should be able to register to vote with proper identification anytime before that election. And we're pushing for a ballot initiative that would create same-day voter registration in Rhode Island to expand that access even more. And I would love to see an early voting day be mandated for a Saturday. Right now, cities and towns can determine on their own whether or not they're going to open on a Saturday for early voting, but I think we can move toward a definitive Saturday for early voting to help create that flexibility for non-traditional schedules.
Another common voting barrier, this is another form of right engagement, particularly among unrepresented communities, is the perceived reality that residents' votes don't make an impact. So Secretary Amore, how important is it to civically engage these populations? I know we've kind of like tiptoeing around the subject, but if there are any specific efforts you can point to as well that are taking on this work.
Sure, and I try to tell the young people we talk to all the time that civic engagement isn't necessarily politics, right? You can be involved in your community in many, many ways that can enhance your community, make it a better place to live. And then that usually leads to some sort of political involvement. But we're being very intentional about making sure we're in schools. And we are in schools in every city and town in this state. And when I visit Providence schools, Pawtucket schools, when we see a larger Latino population in the schools, we talk about what it means to be engaged, what it means to vote, and what the results of that vote are. So we're talking to an election director, Kathy Placencia, who works for our office, who reflects the community. For sure, our Deputy Secretary of State, Shelby Maldonado, reflects the community. So the Secretary of State is a white middle-aged male. But because of our campaign outreach and our community outreach during that campaign, we have an office with really high-placed officials who are running the Department of State, Michelle Arias Santabay, who does our legislative work here, director of our legislative affairs. So there's not only the face that you can see, but there's the influence on the policymakers behind the scenes that is incredibly impactful. And some of that comes from people who are organized in their community and working with their community members to make their communities better places to live. So I think that's really important. But we're in schools, we're doing voting rights lessons. We have a student civic liaison program where we have 80 plus kids from around the state who meet with our department. And really they talk about how to access government and how to make an impact. And this group of 80 plus is an incredibly diverse group from all over the state. We believe that they will be our future leaders. We are building a bench of future leaders because they're accessing all of government really in this program, and we'll bring them together in about a month or so in the summit here, where they'll really immerse themselves in state government. So we're working at that, and I make this offer every time I'm appearing anywhere. We will go to any community group that invites us discuss civic engagement, discuss voting rights, discuss voting access, discuss government access. We're more than willing to do that. We've been to 5 communities already talking about voter access before the 2024 election, and we'll continue to do so.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, starting at a young age, right? That's going to really ingrain that sort of message with them, and they can carry that on and maybe even tell their families.
Right. Oh, for sure. That's a great point, Belen, because a lot of the information that comes from a family member means a lot more than if it's coming from an elected official or anybody else, right? There's a trust there within families, and sure, that gets spread that way. That's a great point.
Besides having that information, the results, seeing people that actually do represent you, knowing that it really does work, that can be really inspiring to see people in those positions. So I appreciate you pointing that out. I guess kind of following up with that, a new statewide law has gone into effect this year that allows 17-year-olds to participate in Rhode Island primaries. So Secretary Amore, if you could expand on this for us.
Sure, I was very proud to be the sponsor of that bill when I was in the House of Representatives. Of course, I couldn't get it across the finish line when I was in the House, but we did support that bill, and it is now the law in Rhode Island. And we joined 20 other states and the District of Columbia in offering the opportunity for 17-year-olds who will be 18 by the general election to vote in the primary. And this is incredibly important for 2 reasons. One, the primary process is one half of the process. We want young voters to be involved in the entire process. They should be able to choose who is going to be on the ballot in November. But secondly, and you brought this point up just moments ago, once a young person is engaged, once they cast their first vote at an early age, we know from data that they will continue to vote. They will be lifetime voters. And that's incredibly important. And so while this is a small pool of people, probably around 2,000 statewide, if everyone were to vote, it's incredibly important because it gets the ball rolling for civic engagement and for engaging in our democracy.
So switching gears for a moment, there was a special mayoral election on March 5th for Woonsocket, which has an extensive Hispanic Latino community. About 24% of the city's population has identified as Hispanic or Latino, according to the U.S. Census. Secretary Amore, in your opinion, does representation matter in regard to candidates running for office? Must they reflect the community they seek to serve and represent? I know we were just touching upon this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but I think it's worth talking about more because it's important. So the answer is a resounding yes. And in my office here at the State House, I have a portrait of John O. Pastore, who was the first Italian-American elected governor in the country and the first Italian-American elected to the U.S. Senate. I'm an Italian-American. I heard about him from my dad. So that means something, right? It still means something to me. And we see that across the board. So there is a special election in Woonsocket, and I know Woonsocket has a growing Latino community, and only one government official, city council member, who is a Latina. But I will tell you this: I'm from the city of East Providence, and we have had a series of ceremonial mayors, basically presidents of the city council, and we are really just seeing the Portuguese community take over government in East Providence. We've had reps here and there, but the Mayor De Silva, is of Portuguese heritage, the first Portuguese mayor in East Providence, and East Providence is a 40+% Portuguese heritage city. So there is that lag time, but it's incredibly important for the Latino population in Woonsocket to do what we just talked about. Get involved in community activities, start to work grassroots, and then find that candidate and work with that candidate and make sure your voice is heard and you're at the table. This is a matter of time, right? Woonsocket will reflect Woonsocket's community soon. And I think that's incredibly important, especially for young people, to see people that look like them, who share their backgrounds and stories, because that in essence is the American story.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. And Director Placencia, I guess we're talking about these great campaigns and resources. I was wondering where residents can find more information relating to local and statewide elections.
Sure. So you can visit our local board of you can visit your local board of canvassers, your local city or town located at your local or city town hall, the Board of Elections, and the Rhode Island Department of State for elections information in person. But lots of resources and services are also available online. Vote.ri.gov, your voter information center, is the best place to go for elections information online. So I will also demonstrate how to check your voter information and update your voter information. You'll be able to find information about the presidential preference primary, view a sample ballot, and maps to your local polling place. So here you have your voter information center where you're able to view and update your voter record, or find your polling location or register to vote. So we're going to demonstrate how to view and update your voter record. So once you click on view and update your voter record, you'll be able to input your information: first name, date of birth, first, last name, and date of birth. And it'll bring you up to this screen where you're able to view all of your information, your district information, and you can also find your polling location. It will bring up a map. You can edit your voter record here, print your voter information card, view any upcoming elections, and even apply for a mail ballot online. You'll also be able to click and view all of your early voting locations, or view your voting early location. You'll be able to see your upcoming elections information. If you keep scrolling down below, you'll be able to see your next election, and you'll also be able to view a sample ballot and your assigned polling location for that election. And the cool thing about this is that you can also see all of your elected officials. If you wanted to update your information, you will get to the next screen. You can go to edit your information, and here you'll input your Rhode Island driver's license or state ID and click next. And you'll have to check all the check boxes, hit continue, and you'll be able to edit your information individually. So if you wanted to make a change to your name, your party affiliation, if you notice that your date of birth was incorrect, or you wanted to add contact information or change your address, you can do that and individually edit this information. And you can also apply to be a polling official on this portal. And that information will be sent over to your local board of canvassers, where they will contact you individually if you are interested in becoming a poll worker. Then you'll have to confirm the information by clicking these three boxes, hitting next, and that's it. You've updated your record, you've become a poll worker, and this is all the information that you will receive this information, and you'll also receive a letter once that information has been processed by your local board of canvassers.
Thank you so much for that demonstration. And we've been talking about this, how a new service has become available in the last year that allows Rhode Island voters to apply for their mail ballot online. So I appreciate you showing us the website a bit. I don't know if you want to expand on the importance of having that available online. We have been kind of talking about it here and there, so I didn't know if there was any more you wanted to add on it.
Yeah, if you wanted to apply for a mail ballot using our online portal, you can just click on request a mail ballot online, and you would be able to click here to apply for a mail ballot. Now, you will need a driver's license or state ID in order to apply for a mail ballot. So you'll input your information, and you'll be able to view your record again. If you needed to make any changes, you can also update your information on this portal as well. But if everything seems correct, you can just click confirm that information is correct and click next. You'll be able to apply for the next primary election and input your information if you needed to, and select the party that you would like to request your ballot for. And you can choose any category, and if you choose to vote by mail, you just choose to vote by mail and hit next. And here you'll be able to input your voter information if you wanted your ballot sent to your resident voting address, or if you needed it to be sent to another address, you can input that information here. You'll be able to confirm that information and click next. And that's it. You've successfully applied for a mail ballot. And what you can also do is, if you wanted to track your application to your mail ballot, you can click on ballot tracks and input your information, and you'll be able to get up-to-date information on when your application was processed, to when the ballot was actually mailed out, and when the Board of Elections receives and approves your mail ballot. And this is the Voter Information Center. So in our Voter Information Center, you'll be able to view all of the information that you need. Again, you can apply for a mail ballot, track your mail ballot, view the candidates that have declared, and here you'll find all the information that you need for the presidential preference primary. So here, again, you'll have the same options of voting by mail if you wanted to apply for a mail ballot using our online portal, or you'll have the opportunity to apply to download any of the paper applications and complete those and mail those in, or turn them into your local board of canvassers. You'll also be able to view polling place information, again, how elections work in Rhode Island, and then you'll be able to see your polling places. And for people who are voting in person on election day, you can find your polling place, view sample ballot. And there is a chance that your polling place may have moved from the last time you voted, so it is especially important to check that information before going to vote. And what people may not realize is that vote.ri.gov also shares data on voter information and voter turnout in Rhode Island by clicking all of this information here. And our office is committed to making this information available to anyone who needs it. And all of this information is also available in Spanish as well. And if you click on Español, the entire site gets translated into Spanish. The URL to the site is vote.ri.gov. If anyone has any questions, you can click on the Contact Us page and get in touch with myself or a member of my team.
Thank you so much for that walkthrough. With just so much information, just being out there, and some folks feeling less confident in their digital skills, some of this can be intimidating. So I really appreciate you showing that with us. And yeah, having an entire website in Spanish, it's different than just having bilingual materials. Obviously, there's the idea of access, but also there's sort of like thought into that. So thank you for showing us that. I guess we've been able to cover a good amount of topics. I don't know if there's anything else either of you would like to expand on or mention, remind folks before we go today.
Sure. I'd like to point out two efforts that we're engaged in. One is, when we can, and as often as we can, we go to the naturalization ceremonies at the federal court. And our elections team, including Kathy comes with us, and we register voters right after they've taken the oath of citizenship. I get to speak with them, talk to them about the importance of voting, and then they get right in line and register to vote in real time. And so we're thrilled with that. We are going to continue that as long as I'm Secretary of State. And then the other thing I want to point out is that we have really focused in on underrepresented communities, including Latino communities, in our radio advertisement around elections. We have spent a significant amount of money advertising in that medium, because we know that is a place where we can do better as far as voter turnout, and we will continue to do that as well.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And just a couple of important reminders for the PPP. March 12th is the mail ballot application deadline. March 13th through April 1st is the early voting period. April 2nd is the presidential preference primary. And you can see all your voter information and sample ballots online now at vote.ri.gov.
Secretary Amore and Director Placencia, thank you so much, both of you, for your time. It's been a great pleasure speaking to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been our pleasure.
Everyone, you've been listening to LNN Spotlight with Rhode Island Secretary of State Gregg Amore and Director of Elections Kathy Placencia. LNN Spotlight is produced by the Latino News Network. LNN oversees 7 independent local news and information websites with a statewide coverage, Hispanic Latino editorial focus across the country. Rhode Island Latino News is proud to partner with the Secretary of State's office in informing, educating, and empowering the community about the electoral process. I'm Belen Dumont, writer-editor for the Latino News Network and your host. Thank you all for listening.